Welcome back. And now for the news in detail. We begin with our top story. A Ukraine International Airlines plane has crashed in Iran, killing all 176 people on board. Iranian state media says the airliner crashed after takeoff from Tehran's Imam Khomeini airport due to technical problems. Iran's emergency medical services said rescue operations are facing difficulty as the area is currently ablaze. Responding to the accident, Iran's Red Crescent has said there is no chance of finding survivors. Meanwhile, Boeing says it is aware of media reports and gathering more information. Meanwhile, tensions in the Middle East remain high as the U.S. says at least 2 military bases housing its troops in Iraq have been hit by over a dozen ballistic missiles. Iran state media claims at least 80 of what it calls American terrorists were killed in the attacks, adding that no missile was intercepted.
The missile attack targeted Ain al-Assad base in Anbar province and a base in Erbil, the capital of the Kurdistan region. President Donald Trump said an assessment of casualties and damage is underway and he will make a statement tomorrow. The Pentagon said Washington will take the necessary measures to protect U.S. personnel, partners, and allies in the region. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said Tehran took proportionate measures for self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter. He said Tehran hit the military base from where the attack against Soleimani was launched. Zarif said Tehran does not want an escalation or war, but will defend itself against any aggression. Iraq's government has rejected a Pentagon statement saying that Iraqi civilians have been killed by Iran's missile strike.
Moreover, in Iran, slain Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani has been buried in his hometown of Kerman. The burial was delayed yesterday after stampede at the funeral procession killed at least 56 people. State media reports nearly 200 mourners were injured in the stampede as millions of people gathered to attend the procession. Tehran declared 3 days of national mourning. Soleimani was widely considered the second most powerful man in Iran behind Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. In a related development, the U.S. has banned all American flights from using the airspace over Iran, Iraq, and Gulf of Oman following Tehran's missile attack. The Federal Aviation Administration said the ban has issued because of heightened military activity and increased political tensions in the Middle East. Singapore Airlines has also diverted its flights from Iranian airspace until further notice. Egypt's flag carrier said it is suspending flights to Baghdad for 3 days. The International Air Transport Association also issued a statement reminding countries of their obligation to communicate potential risks to civil aviation. Earlier, Washington warned ships across Middle Eastern waterways of the risk of Iranian action. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi and his Qatar's counterpart agreed to work together to reduce tensions in the Middle East. Speaking over the phone, the two leaders discussed the regional situation after the US airstrike in Baghdad last week. On Monday, Qureshi said Pakistan won't become a party to any regional conflict and urged both the United States and Iran to exercise restraint. Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi says that Iraq has received a letter from the U.S. Army on the withdrawal of the troops from the country. He said the English and Arabic language versions of the letter are not identical, so Iraq has asked for clarification. On Sunday, the Iraqi parliament passed a resolution calling for the withdrawal of the foreign troops from the country. The vote was in response to the U.S. airstrike that killed Iran's top military commander last Friday. NATO has announced it will take some personnel out of Iraq because of the increased danger. In a statement, the bloc said the withdrawal is temporary, but the safety of its personnel is paramount. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan is hosting his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, today to inaugurate a new gas pipeline. Tensions in Libya and Syria also on the agenda of Putin's visit. Putin arrived in Turkey late on Tuesday after paying a surprise visit to Syria. The Russian president met his counterpart, Bashar al-Assad, against the backdrop of a looming war between Iran and the US. On his first visit to Damascus since the conflict started, Putin greeted Russian forces stationed in the country for the Orthodox Christmas. A Kremlin spokesman said both the leaders were briefed on the situation in the country. Russian forces have been supporting the Syrian army in the civil war since 2015. 4 leading European countries have called for an end to the fighting in Libya following emergency talks in Brussels. In a joint statement, the foreign ministers of Britain, France, Germany and Italy said there should be no foreign interference in Libya. EU diplomatic chief Josep Borrell criticized Turkey for its decision to send troops to Libya. Borrell said continuing outside interference is fueling the crisis. The meeting was held a day after Libyan warlord Khalifa Haftar's forces seized the coastal city of Sirte as part of his offensive to control Tripoli. The country has been plunged into chaos since the 2011 uprising that killed longtime leader Muammar Gaddafi. Indian police have filed a case against performer Mehak Mirza Prabhu for holding a Free Kashmir placard. Prabhu held the banner during a demonstration at Mumbai Gateway against attack on students in New Delhi. The FIR has been filed under Section 153B at Kolaba police station in Mumbai. Police said the case has been registered for imputation and assertions against national interest. They said Prabhu has not been called for her statement yet. $205 million workers from 10 Indian trade unions have gone on strike against the government's economic policies. The strike, named Bharat Bandh, meaning closing India, has been called in protest at disinvestment, privatization and labor reform plans. The trade unions have made 12-point demands related to the minimum wage and social security, among others. The protesters have blocked main roads and railway tracks in some cities in West Bengal state. The Indian media says banking and transport systems have been hit by the nationwide strike. More stories to follow right after a short break. Welcome back. In Myanmar, 4 Rohingya Muslim children have been killed in a landmine explosion in western Rakhine state. 5 others were wounded in the attack. 10 local Rohingya people were harvesting firewood in the forest near the village of Kayukyan when the mine exploded. Police have accused fighters from the Arakan Army insurgent group of the attack. Over 100 children were killed or wounded during the civil war last year. In Venezuela, opposition leader Juan Guaido has been sworn in for another term as the Speaker of the National Assembly after braving tear gas. In a tense standoff with the armed forces, Guaido was barred from entering the building for half an hour. As lawmakers started singing the national anthem, the electricity was cut off. Guaido took his oath of office during the power cut. Earlier, Guaido had promised to preside over the legislative session despite what he called a parliamentary coup. Over 6,000 people have died by a measles outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The World Health Organization called it the world's largest and fastest moving epidemic. The WHO said over 300,000 suspected cases have been reported since the start of 2019. Congo's government and the WHO vaccinated over 18 million children under 5 last year. The UN agency said an extra $40 million were required to vaccinate children aged between 6 and 14 years. The measles outbreak in DR Congo has killed twice as many people as Ebola in the Central African country. In China, a 5-storied building has been moved 24 meters horizontally to make way for an expressway in Shandong province. The project of moving the 8,000-ton building in Jinan city of East China took 4 days to finish. The building is the office of a concrete company. During the moving process, company staff members were working in the building. It was the first case for making way for an expressway in order to save cost. US-based business magazine Forbes has listed Pakistan among best under-the-radar places to visit in 2020. In its The Not Hot list, Forbes has outlined places that are off the beaten path and provide an escape from everyday life. Citing award-winning adventure travel company Wild Frontiers, the magazine writes Pakistan has become an increasingly attractive destination. It said with the royal visit of Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, the destination will continue to be one to watch. The magazine said Pakistan offers both history and stunning landscape in its north, where 3 greatest mountain ranges collide. It said the infrastructure with new roads, tunnels and luxury hotels has also improved in recent years. For a quarter of a century, Koenigsegg has been making supercars for a niche market typically reserved for the Italian luxury brands. But in 2020, the Swedish manufacturer plans to launch a less expensive model at the more modest price of €1 million. This report has the details.
On a racetrack, one of the world's most powerful, most expensive and rarest supercars is being put through its paces. Named the Regera, it is one of the latest models from Swedish manufacturer Koenigsegg. For 25 years, its founder has been working quietly to build ultra-high performance cars to compete with the likes of Bugatti and Pagani.
When I started out as a young boy, I was 22 years old when I started the company in 1994. I said to myself that why would anyone buy one of my cars? It's an unknown brand by an unknown person from a country not famous for sports cars, etc., etc. So I said to myself, they have to really stand out and be different and hopefully better in some ways than the competitors out there. Otherwise, I don't have a right to exist in this marketplace.
Quickly, the company notched up a number of records. Its vehicles broke the 0 to 400 to 0 km/h record, clocking 33.29 seconds in 2017, which the manufacturer bested 2 years later with a performance of less than 32 seconds. The driver behind the latest record recalls the attempt well.
It was really bouncy, and there was also a very big bump in when I passed 390 km/h.
The cars are made by hand at this factory in southern Sweden. With dozens of people working on each model, the cars come with a hefty price tag. The most recent costs nearly €3 million. The price may put many buyers off, but the 125 copies of the most recent model were sold out within 2 days. In 2020, the manufacturer aims to make a new, less expensive model in greater numbers, but with a price tag of €1 million, you still might not see a Koenigsegg on the road near you soon.
Beijing says it will further deepen cooperation with Islamabad for greater development of China-Pakistan economic corridor. In a media briefing in Beijing, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Gang Shuan said this will deliver more benefits to the people of both the states. He said an amended protocol to bilateral free trade agreement entered into force last month. Gang said the protocol upgrades and revises the contents of the original pact on market access and tariff reduction schedules. He said under the free trade upgrade between the two countries, almost 75% of all the products will have zero trade tariffs. Oil prices have surged over 4% at the high in early trade after Iran launched a ballistic missile on U.S. military bases in Iraq. U.S. WTI crude oil spiked over 4.5%, its highest level since April. International benchmark Brent crude rose over 4%, touching nearly $72 per barrel, its highest since September. Stock markets across Asia plunged as tensions in Middle East flared after Iranian missiles hit US military bases in Iraq. Investors are roiled, fearing wider conflict in the region, sending them into panic selling. Nikkei 225 dived over 1.5% lower. The Shanghai Composite has lost over 1%, pairing yesterday's gains. Hong Kong's Hang Seng and Seoul's Kospi also lost nearly 1% each. That's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.